All glories to the all glories to the Spirit. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, as my humble obeisance, all glories to
All
God,
all glories to Guru and Gauranga.
Jai.
Thank you very much, His Grace and Srivas Vanacari, for being here. Sorry that you came in before any of the students.
Well, yesterday I disappointed everybody, so today I had to be on time.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for your being here. You didn't disappoint. The nature was not in alignment with the situation there, so it was beyond your control. So we understood.
It's our offenses.
No.
It's our offenses.
No, I don't agree.
So we thank you very much. So, dear students, the ground rules again. We're coming into the new unit of the Srimad Bhagavatam study, which is Bhakti Vaibhava. We're starting with unit 12, which is Grace Srivas Vanacari, who is one of our revered teacher and guru in the West African region. And we request all of the devotees to please keep in mind the ground rules and conduct for attending these classes. We expect all of the students to come in a few minutes at least before the agreed time. We should also try to dress devotionally as much as possible. Excuse me. Try to dress as much as possible, even if when we are in clothes that are not devotional clothes. If when possible, let us have a tilak, let us have a conduct properly, let us arrange our lightings so that it doesn't distract or disturb the eyes. So we some of these few rules, we know them, so let us keep them at place. And then we request that all students put their video on while the class goes on. If there's going to be any reason why one of us is not going to put his video on, he should please notify us ahead of time so that we don't have to complain while we're in line. So thank you very much for being here, all of you. So once again, we welcome you, His Grace Srivas Vanacari. And now the floor is yours. We can start.
Hare Krishna. So before we start, I will just say some few prayers to create auspiciousness for the class to begin. Omagyana Tamaridasya Gyanan Ganashalaka Chakshuram Leitam
My
Yena.
video will be off for some few moments. I need to take care of something.
Sri Chaitanya Mano Bistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahim Dalati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yukta Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunastam Vitam Tam Sanjivam Sadvaitam Samadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Vitam Cha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Iti Namini Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shri Tadmani Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Iti Namini Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvasesha Shunyavadi Pasachade Satarini Panchakalpatarabhyascha Kripasindubhya Ivacha Paritanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagayate Grim Yatkari Patamahan Vande Shri Guru Dina Taranam Paramanam Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Akanda Mandalakaram Vyaptayana Characharam Tatpadam Dashitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So everyone is welcome to this unit, Bhakti Vaibhava, Unit 12, Kandaramuni and Devahuti. So in this chapter, in this unit, which comprises of 5 chapters, we shall be discussing Kandarma Muni, the great yogi, and Devahuti, the great princess. And as usual, I have a PowerPoint picking out the most important aspect of the purport so that we can maximize the use of our time. Actually, in Mayapur, on site, normally we treat 1 chapter a day of 3 hours, because that is a rush. It's a rush program, because some of the chapters are quite long, but it is expected that in a day, the chapter should be finished. Say, for instance, if we're on site from Monday to Friday, this unit is supposed to finish. But since we are doing it at weekends, and also the time is limited, we're having 2 hours per class, we cannot cover the whole chapter in 1 sitting. So I hope that in 2 classes, we can cover 1 chapter. And so hopefully in 5 or 6 weeks, we should cover the whole unit. So without much ado, we would begin the chapter. As we can see, the topics covered in the chapter on this, you can see on the slide. Sunaka Rishi, his questions. Sunaka Rishi is asking Sutta Goswami a number of questions. So from text 1 to 8 are the questions that Sunaka Rishi put before Sutta Goswami. And from text 9 to 11, Vidura asked about Brahma's creation. And then from text 12 to text 15, Maitreya summarized the primary creation. You know, we have primary and secondary creations. We have Sarga and Visarga. Sarga means the primary creation, and Visarga means the secondary creation. Sarga is the manifestation of the ingredients by Mahavishnu, Mahatattva, the modes of nature, false ego. These are all considered Sarga, primary creation. And the planetary systems, the human forms, and universal conditions are considered Visarga because they were created by Brahma. So there is Mahavishnu's creation and there is Brahma's creation. So Mahavishnu's creation is called Sarga and Brahma's creation is called Visarga. So Maitreya summarized the primary creation from 12 to 15, and then the creation continues from between 7 and 53. The creation, both Sarga and Visarga are described. So in this chapter, you will not hear anything concerning Devahuti and Kandharva Muni, even though it is part of the unit. But this chapter stands out as the chapter of creation, both Sarga and Visarga. So we have a section review. Just to give us an idea of what we should expect in the various sections. Verses 1 to 11 is considered a section. And so the review of that section is as follows. Sri Shunaka asked Sutta Goswami to continue narrating the talks between Vidura and Maitreya. Sutta Goswami explained that Vidura, pleased to hear the narrations of Lord Bhava, then inquired how Brahma created living beings after evolving the Prajapatis, how the Prajapatis created and evolved this universe, and how their wives assisted them. So this is what we shall be hearing from this section, consisting of verses 1 to 11. In the second section, which is verses 12 to 16, Maitreya then summarizes Sarga. Sarga, the initial creation by Vishnu, Mahavishnu, when the equilibrium of the combination of the three modes of material nature was agitated by the unseen activity of the living entity, Mahavishnu, and the force of time, the Mahatattva was produced, which in turn produced three kinds of false ego, which in turn involved many groups of 5 principles. Combining with the help of the energy of the Supreme Lord, they produce a shining egg, which the Lord entered it as Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, sprouting from his navel an effulgent lotus, the reservoir of all conditioned souls, and the birthplace of Brahma. So this is Sarga, the creation of the Lord, the creation before the birth of Brahma. So in this section, we'll be discussing how the ingredients of the creation were manifested by Mahavishnu. So that is the main subject of this section, leading to the birth of Brahma. After Mahavishnu had manifested the universes, then he entered each universe as Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. And then he created water from his own body, filled the universe, with half of the universe filled with water. And Lord Vishnu, Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, Garbha means ocean. So he creates his own ocean and lies on top. And then from his navel, a shiny lotus flower sprouts. And on top of that lotus flower, Lord Brahma is born. And the lotus flower, the stem of the lotus flower is the concentrated living entities. All the living entities are concentrated in the lotus flower. And of course, the lotus flower also represents the various planetary systems, with Brahma's planet as the topmost. So we shall be looking at that in this section. The next section, 17 to 53, Maitreya then summarizes Visharga, secondary creation by Brahma. Brahma began by creating the 5 kinds of ignorance that cover the conditioned souls. When Brahma threw off his body of ignorance, the Yakshas and Rakshasas seized it. Overpowered by hunger and thirst, they went to devour Brahma. Next, Brahma produced the chief demigods, shining with goodness. After that, he produced from his buttocks demons who attacked him for sex life. And in fear, Brahma sought protection from the Lord. The Lord ordered Brahma to cast off that subtle body, which took the form of twilight. So in this section, we shall be discussing the creation of Brahma, which is technically called Visharga, or the secondary creation. The Sharga is the creation before Brahma's birth, which is done by Mahavishnu. And then Visharga is a creation that was manifested by Brahma after he took birth from Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. So that is what we shall look at in this session. So the section still continues. The deluded demons saw the twilight as a beautiful girl who awakened their lust. After speaking words of infatuation, they seized her. Next, from Brahman's own loveliness, he manifested the host of Gandharvas and Apsaras. From his sloth, the ghosts and fiends. From his navel, the Sadyas and Pitas. From his power of invisibility came the Siddhas and the Vidyadharas. From his reflection came Purushas and Kinnaras. From his stretched out body came the snakes, and from his mind came man. The demigods and others praised the creation of man, who would please the demigods by acts of sacrifice. Lord Brahma, having equipped himself with saintly qualities, manifested the great sages. So this is a continuation of the previous session, or the session we had between 17 and 53, verses 17 and 53. All of this will be discussed, which is mainly how Brahma manifested the various species of life, the Prajapatis, the demigods, Gandharvas, Apsaras, Siddhas, Vidyadharas, Kinnaras, King Purushas, and how he eventually created man from his own mind, and then he created the sages when he was fully equipped with saintly qualities. So that is a summary of the chapter that we are about to embark on. So now we shall begin to read the verses, and then the extracts I have taken from the purports I put on the slides so that we don't have to read the whole purport in order to extract subjects for discussion. So the first verse, I will chant the sloka, but the rest, we don't chant any sloka, we just read the translations so that we can move faster. The first verse says, Shonoka Ovacha Mahim Pratishtam Adyasya Sute Swayambhuvo Manu Kani Avastishtat Dwarani Marga Yavara Janmanam. The translation. Sri Shunaka inquired, "O Sutta Goswami, after the earth was again situated in its orbit, what did Swayambhuva Manu do to show the path of liberation to persons who were to take birth later on?" So you have just finished Unit 11. Unit 11 discusses the appearance of Varahadev. In text 18, in chapter 18, the story of Varahadev lifting Mother Earth from the depth of the oceans, because the earth had fallen into the Garbha ocean and needed to be salvaged, needed to be brought out. So the Lord appeared through the nostrils of Brahma and expanded into a huge, gigantic form as Lord Varaha. And then he went into the ocean. The Garbha ocean is half the universe full of water. Nobody can enter that ocean because it's such a vast ocean. Only the Lord, he can enter that ocean. So he came as Varahadev, fully equipped to deliver Mother Earth from that ocean. And Hiranyaksha, who is one of the residents of Vaikuntha, who had appeared in this world as a demon on the desire of the Lord, because Krishna wanted to have some sporting time with his dear devotees. So they had to accept a very unpleasant positions as demons. But it was all meant for the pleasure of Krishna. Krishna wanted to come into the material world to enjoy his pastimes of fighting, enjoy his pastimes of wrestling. And so these dear devotees, Jai and Vijay, they came down as demons, very powerful demons, in order to give Krishna that service of fighting him. So, so in chapter 18 of the previous unit, we saw how the Mother Earth was delivered from the Garbha ocean by Varahadev. And so this question asked by Sunaka Rishi to Sutta Goswami is very, very relevant. After the earth was again situated in its orbit, what did Swayambhuva Manu do to show the path of liberation to persons who were to take birth later on? So in the opening of this, in the discussion, the opening discussion, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about the Manus. The appearance of the Manus is foremost here. So he said the appearance of the Lord as the first boy incarnation occurred during the time of Swayambhuva Manu, whereas the present age is in the period of Vaivashata Manu. Each Manu's period lasts 72 times the cycle of 4 ages. And one cycle of ages equals 4.320 million solar years. That's 4,320,000 years times 72 solar years is the reign of one Manu. In each Manu's period, there are many changes in many ways, and there are 40 Manus within a day of Brahma. It is understood here that Manu creates scriptural regulations for the salvation of the conditioned souls who come to the material world for material enjoyment. So the first aspect of Srila Prabhupada's discussion is dealing with the Manus. So we have a slide, I think 2 slides, discussing the Manus, because in one day of Brahma, there are 14 Manus. One day of Brahma, there are 14 Manus. And one day of Brahma is calculated as 4,320,000 times 72 Divya Yugas. That's one day of Brahma. And in that one day, 14 Manus. Manus are like the kings of the universe. They are the managers of the universe. And each of them takes care of a period. So when Varahadev appeared in the first incarnation, so to speak, he appeared during the period of Swayambhuva Manu. Now, we have to understand that when a Manu is reigning, he comes along with his own team. Each Manu, during the reign of each Manu, there is a particular incarnation of the Lord. During the reign of each Manu, there is a particular personality who acts as Indra. During the reign of each Manu, the 9 sages that give advice to the Manu are present. So each Manu comes along with an incarnation of the Lord, with a particular person as Indra, and with the 9 sages. So if you see on this diagram, we have Swayambhuva Manu. He's a Manu, the first Manu. The incarnation of the Lord during the period of Swayambhuva Manu is Yagyamurti. And the personality who became Indra is Jagya. The next Manu is called Swarochisa Manu. Swarochisa Manu. Swarochisa Manu, during his reign, Vibhu is the incarnation of the Lord. And Rochana became Indra. After Swarochisa Manu, we have Uttama Manu. Uttama Manu follows Swarochisa Manu. And during the reign of Uttama Manu, Satyasena was the incarnation of the Lord in the universe. And Satyajit is the person who was Indra, who occupied the position of Indra. Indra is an office. And anyone qualified can occupy it. Just like even Brahma, the position of Brahma is an office. Anybody can become Brahma. Anybody can become Indra if you have the qualification. The position of Shiva cannot be occupied by anybody. Neither the position of Krishna can be occupied by anybody. But the position of Brahma, the position of Indra, they can be occupied by any living entity who qualifies. So the next Manu is Tamasa Manu. Tamasa Manu, during his reign, Lord Hari is the incarnation. And the person who was Indra is Trikshika. Then after Tamasa Manu, we have Raivata Manu. And the Lord who incarnated during his reign was called Vaikunta. And Indra is taken up by the personality Vibhu. Then we have Chakshusha Manu, the 6th Manu. It's called Chakshusha Manu. And Ajita was the incarnation of the Lord. And Mantra Druma took up the position of Indra. Then we have Vaivashvata Manu. Vaivashvata Manu, the incarnation of the Lord is Vamanadev. And Purandara is the Indra. So we are going through the period of Vaivashvata Manu. So Vamanadev is the incarnation of the Lord who is present during this Vaivashvata Manu And the personality who is taking up the job of Indra is called Purandara. So that is the actual personality acting as Indra. So as Prabhupada mentions in the Bhagavad Gita purport, we are just about half day of Brahma. From the creation, we are just about half day of Brahma. So if there are 14 Manus in the day of Brahma, so it means 7 Manus have already ruled. And of course, we are in the 7th Manu. The 7th Manu is Vaivashvata Manu. So these are from Swayambhuva Manu till date, these are the Manus that have reigned or ruled the universe. Now the next slide will show us the future Manus. These are the Manus that have already ruled the universe. And the current Manu is Vaivashvata Manu. He is ruling right now. Now the next 7 Manus, they are the future Manus. And then the incarnations that are going to be present during the rule of these Manus, and the personalities who are going to become Indra during this period, the half day of Brahma. So we go to the next slide. These are future Manus. So right after Vaivashvata Manu, Sarvarani Manu will take over. And the personality of Godhead who would appear will be Sarvabhauma. And that time, Bali will become Indra. It's already predicted that in the future, Bali Maharaj will become Indra. So when Sarvarani Manu becomes the Manu of the universe, the control of the universe, Sarvabhauma will be the incarnation of the Lord, and Bali Maharaj will occupy the position of Indra. That is already mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And after Sarvani Manu, we have Daksha Sarvani Manu. At that time, the incarnation of the Lord we will call Rishabha. And the personality who would become the Indra is Adbhuta. Then after Daksha Sarvani Manu, we have Brahma Sarvani Manu. And the Lord will be Vishaksena. The incarnation of the Lord will be Vishaksena. And the person who will occupy the position of Indra will be Sambhu. Then after Brahma Sarvani Manu, we have Dharma Sarvani Manu. And the Lord, the incarnation of the Lord will be Dharma Setu. And Vaidrita will be the person who would take the position of Indra. Then we have Rudra Sarvani Manu. The incarnation of the Lord will be Sudama. And the personality who will take the position of Indra during this Rudra Sarvani Manu will be Rita Dharma. Then after that, we have Deva Sarvani Manu. And the Lord's incarnation will be Yogeshwara. And Devaspati will be Indra. He will take the position of Indra. Then we have the last Manu of the day of Brahma will be Indra Sarvani Manu. And the incarnation of the Lord will be Brihad Manu. And Suchi will be he will accept the position of Indra. Then this will bring the day of Brahma to an end. So as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, in each of the Manus period, there are many changes in many ways. And in fact, it is mentioned that between the Manus, when one Manu is leaving and the next Manu is taken over, they are described as sandhyas, conjunctions. And during these conjunctions, sometimes there are some upheavals, there are some disturbances. Like the story of Noah mentioned in the Bible, actually that is that is a story from the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the 8th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Matsya incarnation is described. And he appeared and as a little fish to his great devotee, Satyaraj. And after he revealed his identity to this great devotee, then he told Satyaraj that one Manu's reign is about to come to an end. And so there will be flooding of the universe. And therefore, he was going to bring a golden boat, a golden ark. And there will be a Vasuki will be the rope that will be attached to the golden ark boat and hooked to the horn of Matsya Avatar. And then Matsya Avatar will direct the boat to safety. So Satyaraj was asked to bring all these 9 sages into the boat, bring all living entities, pairs of living entities, male and female, different plants, just as is described in the Bible. So that was a Sandhya, a Manu Sandhya, a junction between one Manu leaving and the other Manu taking over. So there are always some changes, there are always some upheavals, there are always some disturbances when one Manu is leaving and the next Manu is coming. So I don't know whether there is any question on this issue of the Manus before we proceed.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for making it so brief and giving us overview, and which give us a very clear understanding of the whole chapter. My little question is just that you said they lifted the story from the Quran in the Bible, but the way they narrated in the Bible is a bit different, because they said Noah built the ark, but now you are talking of a golden ark.
Yeah, that's interesting, because actually we can see that they just pick the story and they embellish it and presented it. You know, they said Noah built the ark and all that, but the Bhagavatam says that ark was not built by Satyaraj. It was actually supplied by Matsya Avatar. And it was not just an ordinary ark, it was a golden ark. But if you look at the circumstances, it's the same. It's said because the one Manu is going and the next Manu will come, there was going to be a flood, a universal flood. And the scriptures, the Vedas will be destroyed. Life will be destroyed. So in order to protect all this, the Matsya Avatar came to save the Vedas, to save the literature, the Vedic literatures, from being washed away by the flood, by the deluge. So, but exactly the same thing is every species of life, male and female. King Satyaraj was ordered to do that, male and female. And then the sages, were also to be part of that situation. They will protect the scriptures. While the scriptures were on boat, they'll be chanting mantras, and then Masya Avatar himself will direct the movement of the boat on the ark, using Vasuki, the king of the snakes, as a rope. Now be hooked to the ark and then hooked to the horn of Masya Avatar. So therefore, you can see the authentic story in the Srimad Bhagavatam. What is in the Bible is that they just took the story and embellish it the way they want it for the digestion of their followers. The real story is, in fact, when I read the story, I was just happy that I got the real story. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Babu.
Hare Krishna. Any other comment? We can
Hare
move.
Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji. There are several questions that arise from this description. I don't want to lag the class for so long, but let me take it from the point where you stopped, talking about the story of the Matsya Avatara.
Yeah.
We read in the Bhavishya Purana about the era of the birth of Christ, the birth of the Prophet Muhammad, where they are going to be born, their mothers, their father, their generation, and the kind of teachings they will give.
Yep.
So by virtue of this information in the Bhavishya Purana, which is considered Vedic, we take Christianity, Islam, and the later day religions as authentic.
Okay.
And because it is authentic, we also accept the scriptures that are written or spoken by this incarnation of God.
All right.
Of course, we know the incarnations are of different category, but they are incarnations of God because they were given birth to for a specific purpose, to fulfill the mission of the Lord at a particular time based on the circumstances. Now, looking at the story that we're talking about in this story of Matsya Avatara, the way it is presented in the Bible, could we say that it is not authentic, or could we say that the writers of the story were just trying to present the story for the context of the listener, and therefore they take away part of the information for easy digestion? Or do we say that the stories there are not authentic, even though the tradition is authentic based on the Puranas?
Well, I would say that the authors, bearing in mind the caliber of his audience, had to present these scriptures in a way understandable for his audience. So they might have done that on purpose for the digestion of their audience. But it's also possible that they do not have the full story. You know, the Bible actually means a collection of books. The Bible has no author. It's a collection. Different books are put together, and that makes it a Bible. Biblio. Biblio means collection of books, a library of books. So, and then the authors of the various books, is it to write a scripture, you must have certain qualifications. It is not everybody who can just get up and write a scripture. in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is mentioned Brahma Vilapsa Karna Pata Vaya, that for somebody to write a scripture, he must be free from the 4 defects of illusion, of the tendency to cheat, make mistakes, imperfect senses. For one to write a scripture, he must have control of his senses, he must give the tendency to cheat, he must be out of illusion, and he must not, his senses must be under control. So this also has to be considered, that the authors of these books, whether they qualified by these standards to write or not. But so both is there. First is that they wrote for according to the audience, for the understanding of their audience. So because of that, they might have left out some information, considering that their audience were not ripe enough, mature enough to comprehend all that. So they took out what was essential, took out what they could digest, and the rest they left it. That is there. But we can also deny the fact that if they themselves do not understand the subject matter, they cannot also present it. They can only present what they understand. So both arguments can be put up, that first, they did it as a way of helping their audience, but there is also a possibility that even the authors themselves could not comprehend the subject matter properly, and so they just avoid it completely. So both aspects is there.
Thank you. And like I said, there are several questions that have been raised by these descriptions, but we will not go into all of that so that we can move forward. But before we leave, I will just summarize my understanding in your explanation so that I will be clear of what I had.
All right.
Yes, we cannot wish away the scriptures that is called the Bible today, because there are elements of truth there.
Certainly. Yeah.
So we cannot wish it away.
Yeah.
And as we know that religion is also given according to the
time, place, and circumstance. Yeah.
Time, place, and circumstances. It could be transcendental religion, it could be material religion under the influence of the 3 modes of material nature.
Yeah.
And because of the nature, because if we remember vividly from the in the Purana that predicted the rising of this religion, it is said it is going to be given to, they will be preaching to a particular class of people who are described to be under the influence of the modes of material nature. They are not unlike Bhagavata, which is given to transcendentalists. Yeah. So we can it is safe then to say that whatever is given is authentic in the sense that there are elements of truth, and in the universal arrangement of the Lord, there was this arrangement to bring people from whatever level they had to a particular level so that they can get understanding of higher. Just like some of us have come from those traditions to be here we are today.
Yes.
So yeah, so I'm taking it from that perspective, that this is the summary of this answer to this question. So therefore, we cannot wish it away, but at the same time, we understand that they are on a particular level meant for particular circumstances for that purpose. Correct.
In fact, I was searching for something in the Bible yesterday, and I came across some information. It was interesting. King David performed, the story of the box of covenant. It is described just as we do Ratha Yatra. King David they were carrying the box of covenant on a chariot. And King David was dancing. There was trumpet, there was musical instruments, there was singing and dancing, and King David was the chief dancer. He was in front of the car and he was dancing. And one lady criticized him that you are the king, why are you dancing in public? And King David said, if this dancing is for the pleasure of the Lord, I would dance 1,000,000 times.
Yeah.
When I read that, and it's a long story, they ended up, the box of covenant stopped somewhere. They left the box of covenant for about 3 months. And then where they left the box of covenant, there was a lot of opulence. The kingdom became better. So King David had to go back and now take the box of covenant to Jerusalem. And when you go through the story, there is a simile. It's so clear and so related to Jagannath Ratha Yatra. But that is the way it is presented. So when the Christians see us performing Ratha Yatra, they say, oh, these people are worshiping idols. But the same thing is reported in the Bible. Same thing. So so these things are presented according to time, place, and circumstance. And we cannot wish them off. We cannot write them off. They are meant for a particular class at a particular time. And that will bring them gradually to that level of the satvata. Satvata means the pure devotees. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the explanation. And I think for those of us, especially those of my colleagues who are studying the Bhakti Vaibhava, I think every devotee who studies at this level should read hidden hymns written by Rasika Prabhu. It has a whole lot of comparative religion, and I'm working on getting sponsorship to bring those books to the West Africa. I was fortunate to get a few copies while in India, and I had to personally brought them back. And just some few copies, about 64 copies. I'm left with just some few copies now. And I think this book will be very good for preaching in this part of the world, because it comparatively brings together the Western scriptural religion and how they develop, and the similarities into our traditions, how they come together. So I think it's a social resource book. Okay. I'm hoping that Krishna will fulfill my desire so that I can bring more of those books to this part of the world.
So you should reserve the few copies, reserve one for me.
Okay, Prabhu. I will definitely do that.
Yes. I would love to read those comparative subjects, because we are having some things to do at the University of Ghana, and we've also tried to reach out to the University of Cape Coast. We also have something doing in the University of University of Science and Technology. So side literature, side scriptures can help us to connect with the students.
Yeah, I will arrange to send across as soon as I get an opportunity.
All right.
And then hopefully, like I said, maybe we'll get more of those books. I've already deposited 10 copies in the library of University of Jos.
Wow.
I'm keeping 5 copies for Plateau State University. And I've given several intellectuals those few copies, the ones I could reach to. And I took it in my last trip also, and I gave it to some ambassadors. Actually, the mayor of Rwanda, I was able to give 1 copy to him. And I was very pleased I was able to do that.
Wow, great. Okay, so we'll look forward to reading that literature.
Thank you.
So I think in the absence of anything else, we can move forward, because Srila Prabhupada mentioned some other important point in the purport. Yes. So we have it here, the kindness of the Lord. That is still coming from the verse 1 purport. So somebody would like to read this?
Krishna Prabhu, can you read?
Okay.
Hare Krishna from the purpose.
Yeah. Read the slide. The slide
Slide on the screen.
on the screen.
It is understood here that men who create spiritual relations and salvation of foundational souls who can be material for material enjoyment. The Lord is so kind that any soul who wants to enjoy its material wealth is given full facility for enjoyment, and at the same time, he is shown the path of salvation. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So the kindness of the Lord. The Lord is very, very kind. That even though the living entity chooses not to stay with the Lord, not to remain in the spiritual environment. The living entity chooses to be away from Krishna. Krishna does not give up the living entity. He accompanies the living entity as the super soul, and then he makes the necessary arrangement for the living entity to exercise his right to enjoy material nature. At the same time, he is given the opportunity to return home back to Godhead. So it's said here, the Lord is so kind that any soul who wants to enjoy this material world is given full facility for enjoyment. And at the same time, is shown the path of salvation. So the scriptures, as mentioned, Manu Samhita, or Manu Smriti, are written to help the living entity connect back to the spiritual world. Maya Mugda Jiveranahi Swata Krishna Gyan. But a conditioned soul cannot revive his own Krishna consciousness. Therefore, out of the causeless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Vedic scriptures were compiled. The supplements on the Vedic literatures were compiled. The Puranas were compiled. The Manusmriti were compiled. All of this are meant.
Hare Krishna Raj. Hare Krishna Raj.
Pardon me?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Sorry for interrupting. Some of the audience have to mute so that there's so many noises.
Some noise somewhere. Okay.
Yes, so everybody should mute.
Kindly mute so that we don't hear the noise. So the Lord makes arrangement to provide the scriptures, Vedic scriptures, Puranas, supplements, Manusmriti, and all of this in order to give guidance to a living entity. So that is said to be the mercy of the Lord. Kripaya Kaila Krishna Veda Purana. out of the mercy of the Supreme Lord, Kripaya, the Vedic scriptures are provided. The Puranas are provided. Manusmriti is provided to serve as guidance to the living entities that have found themselves in the material world. So this is the kindness of the Lord, that even though we are running away from him, even though we want to turn away from the Lord follows us as super soul in every life, and the Lord makes arrangement for the Vedic scriptures to be written, spoken for the benefit of giving guidance to the living entity. So in this way, the path of liberation is provided to the living entity. So we will go to the next verse. So somebody can read just a translation.
Madhuvan Prabhu, can you do that?
Translation.
Madhuvan Prabhu.
Is it text 2?
Okay.
Text 2, the translation.
Okay, just the translation. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Translation. He inquired about Vidura, who was a great devotee and friend of Lord Krishna, and who gave up the company of his elder brother because the latter, along with his sons, played tricks against the desires of the Lord.
Okay, you can also read a slide on the screen.
Okay. As a devotee, Vidura showed by example that anywhere that Krishna is not honored is a place unfit for human habitation. The devotee may be tolerant regarding his own interests, but he should not be tolerant when there is misbehavior towards the Lord or the Lord's devotee. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. So the character of a devotee is displayed by Vidura here. Vidura showed by example that anywhere that Krishna is not honored is a place unfit for human habitation. A devotee may be tolerant regarding his own interest, but he should not be tolerant when there is misbehavior toward the Lord or the Lord's devotee. So this is the standard behavior that a devotee puts up. We all know the story. Vidura was the junior brother of Dhritarashtra and Pandu. But when Dhritarashtra and his sons, they stood against Krishna's desire, when they refused to accept Krishna's advice, Vidura felt that the palace was no more a place for his living. Vidura felt that wherever Krishna is disregarded, wherever the Lord is not honored, that place becomes unfit for the residence of a devotee. So Vidura, he gave up the palace life. he left the bow at the door of the palace and went on pilgrimage. So the character of a devotee is that he's a lover of Krishna. He's a lover of the devotees of the Lord. Krishna Prema, Krishna Bhakti, Maitri Acharana. One who has love for Krishna, one who has love for the devotees of Krishna, one who shows mercy to the neophyte devotees and the ignorant people, and one who avoids the envious. He is described as a Shuddha Bhakta. Shuddha Bhakta. And only such a devotee is qualified to relish the narrations of the Lord's pastimes. Only such a devotee is qualified to relish the holy names of the Lord. So, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami talks about Bhakti Swabhava and Krishna Swabhava. Bhakti Swabhava means the devotee has a particular nature. And Krishna Swabhava means Krishna also has his particular nature. So here, the Bhakti Swabhava is that any place that Krishna is not on it, any place a devotee is not on it, a real devotee will not live there. That is called Bhakti Swabhava, the character of a devotee, the nature of a devotee. And Krishna Swabhava is that Krishna cannot tolerate his devotees being offended, his devotees being defamed, his devotees being attacked. Krishna will not tolerate that. Even though the devotee may be very forgiving, the devotee may be very tolerant, but Krishna will not tolerate such offenses towards his devotees. So, the real character of a devotee is that he endeavors to love the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He endeavors to love the devotees of the Lord. He shows mercy to the neophyte devotees and the ignorant people. And then he avoids the envious class of people. Actually, in the 4th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Manu, Vaibhava Manu, in order to dissuade Dhruva from killing the Yakshas in their millions, Vaibhava Manu told Dhruva, Titikshaya Karunaya Maitreya Chakila Jantasu Samatwena Cha Sarvadma Bhagavan Samprasidati. Vaibhava Manu is telling Dhruva, Titikshaya Karunaya, that the Lord is very happy. Krishna is very happy. Bhagavat Samprasidati. Bhagavad Sampatista, the Lord is very happy when a devotee shows mercy, when a devotee shows tolerance, when a devotee shows friendship, when a devotee extends his love to other living entities, Krishna is most satisfied. So here, Vidura, being such an exemplary devotee, because Dhritarashtra and his sons, the Kauravas, were against Krishna's desire, Vidura felt that there was no need to live in such an environment. An environment full of offenses, an environment of aparat cannot promote Krishna consciousness. So a serious devotee will leave such an environment where Krishna is blasphemed, where the devotees are blasphemed, where Krishna is attacked, where the devotees are attacked. A genuine devotee will not be part of that environment. And that is being demonstrated here by Vidura. So Vidura sets the example for us to follow. Now we should not tolerate the blasphemy of the Lord, neither should we tolerate the blasphemy of the devotees of the Lord. And we tolerate this, and we entertain this, our own devotional service will be destroyed. Just by hearing the blasphemy of the Lord, or by hearing the blasphemy of the devotees, we are committing spiritual suicide. We are drinking poison unknowingly. So therefore, Bhakta Swabhava and Krishna Swabhava. A devotee may be very tolerant, but Krishna will not tolerate. But Vidura, he is showing us what we should do in a circumstance where we are aware that Krishna is being blasphemed or his pure devotees are being blasphemed. One should not be party to such an activity because it's very destructive. And so Vidur is showing us by his example here. Text 3. Somebody can read text 3.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, go ahead, read text 3.
Go ahead, Tamala Krishna.
Yeah.
Class discussion. Raja Muti Sabaya.
No, just the translation.
Vidura was completely cleansed of all contamination by
No. Prabhuji, read the translation on your text. Text 3.
Okay. Yes. Vidura was born from the body of Vaibhava and was not less than him. That he accepted lotus feet of Krishna wholeheartedly and was attached to his devotees.
Okay, thank you. Because this is for text 4, actually. So here it is saying that Vidura was born from the body of Vaibhava and was not less than he. Thus he accepted the lotus feet of Krishna wholeheartedly and was attached to his devotees. So the further qualifications of Vidura are described here. He was a great devotee of the Lord. He was a friend of the Lord. He was the son from the seminal discharge of Srila Vyasadeva. Therefore, he was equally as exalted as Srila Vyasadeva. Sometimes they say like father, like son. Srila Vyasadeva had very exalted sons. Shukadeva Goswami is one of them, and Vidura is one of them. So, because of his wonderful birth, because of his high parentage, naturally, he was a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, he accepted Krishna as his worshipable Lord and followed the instructions of Krishna wholeheartedly. So text 4 says, Vidura was purified of all passions by wandering in sacred places, and at last he reached Haridwar, where he met the great sage who knew the science of spiritual life, and he inquired from him. Sonaka Rishi therefore asked, what more did Vidura inquire from Maitreya? So, from the purport, Prabhupada says, Virajastirtha Sevaya. Vidura was completely cleansed.
Prabhu, I think what's happening? We can't hear you.
You can hear me?
Okay, now we can hear you now.
I see. So, Virajastirtha Sevaya, Vidura was completely cleansed of all contamination by traveling to places of pilgrimage. But Srila Narottam Das Thakur, a great acharya of the Vaishnava sect, has forbidden us to go to such places of pilgrimage, because in this age, the times having so changed that a sincere person may have a different impression on seeing the behavior of the present residents of the pilgrimage sites. So the question is, should devotees go on pilgrimage or not? So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is quoting Srila Narottam Das Thakur, who is a great acharya, that one should not go on pilgrimage. Narottam Das has forbidden us to go to such places of pilgrimage because in this age, times have so changed that a sincere person may have a different impression on seeing the behavior of the present residents of the pilgrimage sites. So, should devotees go on pilgrimage or not? This is a class discussion. Should we go on pilgrimage or we should not go on pilgrimage? You can contribute. Anybody can contribute. Narottam Das Thakur is a great Vaishnava acharya. He says that we are forbidden to go on pilgrimage. So, should we go on pilgrimage or we should not go on pilgrimage?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
From this explanation, I think it's better we meditate on Lord Vishnu within ourselves. And because sometimes when you go to pilgrimage, we might expect so much. But just as it is explained, this age of Kali Yoga, there are a lot of things happening nowadays, and which can even discourage somebody. So meditating on the Supreme Personality of God within ourselves and engaging in devotional service in our environment, not leaving our service for pilgrimage, might be very beneficial also. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Any other person want to contribute? According to Madhuvan, just meditate on the Supreme Court, do your service, chant Hare Krishna, and don't make an attempt to go on pilgrimage. Any other contribution?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Jyoti Prabhu, Dhanavat.
Yes, as our Acharya said, we should not go to pilgrimage, but our consciousness should be like we should leave our body in Vrindavan or holy sacred places. So I think we can visit the holy places or pilgrimage places, but we should try not to make any offenses or aparad. At least we should have that behavior so that we should not commit any offenses.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the contribution. Any other contribution? We should visit, according to Jyoti Prabhu, we should visit holy places because the scripture says it's good to die in these places. It's good to leave your body in these places. But the only condition is that we should not commit any offense in these places. Any other contribution?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
According to the study of scriptures, it is said that when there are two opposing scriptural texts,
Yep.
and both, which means that both of them are accepted as facts or truth,
Yep.
stated in the scriptures, it means that there is always a third statement if we carefully study.
Right.
When the scriptures tell us don't do this, and in another place the scripture says do that same thing, if we carefully study, we will find the third statement. And that is exactly the case in this situation. The scriptures have told us we should visit the holy places, take shelter there. And this part of the spiritual study here also, which is part of the pramana for studying the scripture, says don't go there. So it means that it's a third statement. And that third statement in this particular case is that we should go to the holy places, but we should go in a right consciousness. So an example is given. Madhuvan Prabhu is very fat, but he does not eat. So a person who does not eat cannot be fat. But Madhuvan, we can see that he's fat, but he doesn't eat in the day. So it means that Madhuvan eats in the night. So in the same way, this particular test, the spiritual master says don't go, but don't go in the wrong consciousness. I think is the middle statement.
Yeah. So in
Sorry,
addition,
Madhuvan Prabhu, I had to use your name.
that is understood. Yeah. The third statement is that you should go to these holy places in the association of exalted Vaishnavas. That is the middle line. We cannot refuse to go to holy places. But so Narottam Das Thakur, his advice is that because the places are populated with unserious people, and those of you who have been to different holy places, you can testify to what Narottam Das Thakur is saying here. In fact, I had a very bad experience in Prayag, Allahabad. The first time I went there, a Naga Baba attacked me with a knife because he wanted money, he wanted donation I didn't give him. He drew a knife and he was going to stab me. And somehow Krishna just made me to be very bold. If I had run, he would have stabbed me. But I did not run. I did not move. I just stood there and I was watching him. He said, if I don't give him donation, he will stab me. And I'm just looking at him. And as I was looking at him, some people just came and started to chastise the Naga Baba. That this man is a foreigner. He has come to your country. And you are spoiling the holy place by behaving like this. So you think because he has not given you a donation, you don't know how much he has in his pocket. Maybe he has no money, and you want him to give a donation. And because he cannot give donation, you want to attack him. You are spoiling India. And so they descended on him, about 3 or 4 people descended on the Naga Baba. And they say, young man, gentleman, go your way. Don't mind him. It's a riff-raff. He doesn't know what it's about. And so I left. So if you are confronted by such a situation, you may conclude that what is the use of going to a holy place only to be attacked by such people? So therefore, the advice is we should go to holy places in the association of other devotees. We should go to holy places under the guidance of exalted Vaishnavas. Actually, we should go to holy places to hear from the exalted Vaishnavas who live there. If we just go there for sightseeing, then we will not get the benefit. That is what Narottam Das Thakur is speaking against here. Going on the holy places for sightseeing. And many people do that. We should go to the holy place in the association of senior devotees, advanced devotees, and drink the nectar, drink the pastimes of those places. Then it's complete. So that is the third line, the third path, as narrated by Sanika Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for that. I actually had a very interesting experience when I went to Vrindavan.
Okay.
I arrived there in the night. The first experience is that when I first got to Vrindavan, after so many years of reading, meditating on Vrindavan,
yeah.
When we got to Vrindavan, I could see on the signboard we have arrived, but when the driver stopped, I told him, I'm going to Vrindavan. He said, Prabhu, you are in Vrindavan. Because it wasn't the Vrindavan of my dream. What I So I quietly went to my guest room and then decided not to do anything. So the following morning, so I took one of our senior god brother. So, and I took it, made it a tradition. I wasn't thinking straight, but some of the other Guru Krishna, seeing my sincerity, gave me an opportunity. So one of our god brothers, he does parikram of Vrindavan every day. And I didn't know, but I just met him in Mangalati and I said, I don't know how I'm going to cope in this place. This is not what I was looking for, but how do I get the benefit of coming here? He said, don't worry, Prabhu. And you just go with me on parikram every morning. I do Vrindavan parikram every morning. So you can go with me. I have some other devotees that join me sometimes. And so that was why I was able to spend my old days I spent in Vrindavan. So every morning I go taking the nectar from this devotee who has been a resident of Vrindavan for several years. And I was so lucky that I had that opportunity because it gave me the real nourishment of being there.
That's right. That is the way to visit a holy place. In the association of senior Vaishnavas who can tell us the past times of these places. Then it becomes wonderful. Yeah. But if you just go on your own and just look around, you only find death. Prabhupada says the holy Dhamma of Vrindavan has a very thin layer of Maya, death. So if you go with your material eyes, all that you see in Vrindavan are the pigs, the monkeys, the dogs, and death. You can't see the holiness of Vrindavan. But if you go in the association of senior Vaishnavas who have absorbed the Vrindavan bhav, they can reveal Vrindavan to you. So that is what Narottam Das Thakur is speaking about here. And I will move to text 5. Somebody like to read text 5?
Okay, text 5 says that Saunaka inquired about the conversation between Vidura and Maitreya. There must have been many narrations of the spotless pastimes of the Lord. The hearing of such narrations is exactly like bathing in the water of the Ganges, for it can free one from all sinful reactions.
You can read the slide which relates to text 5.
The Lord and his activities are identical. The water of the Ganges is purified because it pours forth from the lotus feet of the Lord. Similarly, Bhagavad Gita is as good as this water of the Ganges because it is spoken from the mouth of the Supreme Lord. So it is with any topic on the pastimes of the Lord or the characteristics of his transcendental activities. The Lord is absolute. There is no difference between his words, his perspirations, or his pastimes. The water of the Ganges, the narrations of his pastimes, and the words spoken by him are all on the absolute platform, and thus taking shelter of any one of them is equally good.
Thank you. So, the hearing of such narrations is exactly like bathing in the water of the Ganges, for it can free one from all sinful reactions. So the narrations of the spotless pastimes of the Lord are compared to taking bath compared to taking a bath in the Ganges. And we all know that the Ganges is the water flowing down from the Koshal Ocean, where Mahavishnu is relaxing. And that water is a spiritual water, it's not material water. So the pastimes of the Lord they are as pure and nourishing. Actually, they are none different from the Lord. The Lord and his activities are identical. And that is why the Lord is described as Advayagan or Advaya Tattva. The Lord's energies are inconceivable. His forms inconceivable. His glories inconceivable. His names inconceivable. His pastimes inconceivable. Everything about the Lord is inconceivable. Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. So the glories of the Lord are none different from the Lord. Water from the Ganges purifies the whole universe. Similarly, the words from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they purify the hearers. It is said that in the age of Kali, the Lord manifests himself as Daru Brahman, that's Lord Jagannath. And he manifests himself as Ganga Jal, the water of the Ganges. He also manifests himself as the holy name, the chanting of the holy name. And of course, he also manifests himself as Bhagavad Gita. So all of these are different channels for bringing the mercy of the Lord to the living entities. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions in the Jaivadam that Krishna has three kinds of mercies. And with these mercies, he benedicts the devotees with these three kinds of mercies. There is Alokadana Kripa, mercy of manifesting before the devotee. It's called Alokadana Kripa, the mercy whereby the Lord presents himself to the devotee. Then we have Vachika Kripa, the words of the Lord given to the devotee. It's called Vachika Kripa. Then we have Harda Kripa. Harda Kripa means when the Lord manifests his mercy within the heart of a devotee. So these are the three ways Krishna distributes his mercy to his devotees. He either manifests before the devotee, as he did in the case of Bahulaswar and Shrutadev in Mithila, or Vachika Kripa, as Krishna did to the gopis when Krishna was about to leave Vrindavan. The gopis were blocking the road out of Vrindavan. The gopis were blocking Akura from taking Krishna and Balaram out of Vrindavan. But when Krishna promised the gopis that, don't worry, my dear gopis, I am going to Mathura for a very special business mission. And as soon as I finish with that mission, I shall return. So when the gopis heard from Krishna that he shall definitely return, they allowed Akura to drive his chariot out of Vrindavan. So, and the gopis, they lived their lives just depending on the words of Krishna. They lived their lives always hoping that one day Krishna will come back to us. So it is said that this Vachika Kripa, the mercy of Krishna's words, is so powerful, is so wonderful. It occupies the devotee's mind. It occupies the devotee's heart. And the devotee relishes so much from this Vachika Kripa. Bhagavad Gita is part of this Vachika Kripa. Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita, though he spoke it to Arjuna, but actually Krishna knew that many devotees are going to come in Kali Yuga and they would need his words. So Krishna used Arjuna to give us his mercy in the form of Bhagavad Gita. So the Ganges waters and the Bhagavad Gita, they are non-different because both of them are emanating from the divine personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So the water of the Ganges is purified because it is from the lotus feet of the Lord. And Bhagavad Gita is as good as the water of the Ganges because it is spoken by the Lord. And because the Lord is absolute, therefore, there is no difference between the words of the Lord and between the perspirations of the Lord. The Ganges water is nothing but a perspiration of Mahavishnu. So therefore, we have to take advantage of Bhagavad Gita, and we have to take advantage of the Ganges water. In the Narasingha Purana, it is mentioned, Satyam Satyam Puna Satyam, Utsipya Bhayam Uchate. That throwing my arms into the air, I proclaim it as truth, that there is no scripture better than the Vedas. There is no scripture better than the Gita. There is no deity above Lord Krishna, and there is no river greater than the Ganga or the Ganges. So the water emanating from the lotus feet of Krishna, the words emanating from the mouth of Krishna, the pastimes describing the glories of the Lord, all of these are identical. They're spiritual. And by associating with them, one can become purified and attain the goal of life. We can go to text 6, unless there's a question. Somebody want to read text 6?
Maharaj, can I read?
Yes.
Yeah, Jyoti Sharif, I was going to call you to read it.
Yeah, Prabhu, thank you. Translation. O Sutta Goswami, all good fortune to you. Please narrate the activities of the Lord, which are all magnanimous and worth glorifying. What source of devotee can satisfy by hearing the nectarian pastime of the Lord?
Okay, read the slide.
Activities of the transcendental platform. The narration of the pastimes of the Lord, which are always enacted on the transcendental platform, should be received with all respect by devotees. Those who are actually on the transcendental platform are never satiated by
Satiated.
hearing
Yeah.
satiated
Yeah.
by the hearing the continuous narration of the pastime of the Lord. For example, if any self-realized soul read from Bhagavad Gita, he will never feel satiated.
Yes. And that is the statement that was made by, what is his name? The secretary to Dhritarashtra, Sanjaya. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Sanjaya made some very, very serious statements that hearing the conversation between these great personalities, Lord Krishna and Arjuna, his hair was standing on end. And he wanted to hear these narrations again and again and again. If you read from, I think, verse 74 of chapter 18, 74, 75, 76, 77, and 78. Those are the realizations of Sanjaya after he heard the narrations of Bhagavad Gita from Krishna to Arjuna. So there, Sanjaya categorically made it very clear that hearing such transcendental discussion between such exalted personalities, he was in bath. He was in bliss. And he wanted to hear again and again and again. That is the nature of spiritual subject matters. One is never satiated. Srila Prabhupada says, why is it that we keep chanting the same mantra every day? We have been chanting this mantra for the last 40 years, 50 years, and we continue to chant. We want to chant more because we are never satiated. The more you chant, the more you want to chant. The more you hear, the more you want to hear. So that is the nature of spiritual activities. There is no end to it. It is always increasing. Ananda Buddhi Vardhanam, Lord Chaitanya says. It is always increasing. So therefore, activities on the transcendental platform is always increasing. And for the self-realized souls, such activities cannot satiate them. It cannot satisfy them. They want to hear more. They want to speak more. They want to chant more. They want to relish more. There is no end to it. So that is the beauty of Krishna consciousness. Text 7, it has no purport. It says, one being asked to speak by the great sages of Nayama Serenya, the son of Ramahassan, Sutta Goswami, whose mind was absorbed in the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, said, please hear what I shall now speak. And in text 8, it says, Sutta Goswami continued, Vidura, the descendant of Bharat, was delighted to hear the story of the Lord, who, having assumed by his own divine potency the form of a boar, had enacted the sport of lifting the earth from the bottom of the ocean and indifferently killing the demon Hiranyaksha. Vidura then spoke to the sage as follows. So, the incarnation of the Lord as the boar incarnation appeared for the purpose of lifting the earth from the Garbha ocean. And even though the Lord appeared in the form of a boar, generally the boar or the pig is considered a very dirty animal, a low-class animal. And even in some cultures, they don't rear pigs, they don't touch pigs. But the Lord took this form for the purpose of entering the Garbha ocean and bringing out Mother Earth. So he had to assume the appropriate form that would allow him to execute the function or the mission for which he had appeared. So therefore, it should be understood that even though the Lord took the form of a boar, he was completely transcendental. Those who are actually on the transcendental platform will never be satiated by hearing the continuous narration of the activities of Lord Boa or Varahadev. Karnapi Yusham Aswadya Tyajanti. Hearing the pastimes of the Lord, Karna means the ear. Piyusham, beverage. Hearing the pastimes of the Lord is compared to drinking beverages, sweet beverages. Karna Piyusham. So a devotee who is drinking such sweet beverage cannot give up hearing the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whether the Lord appears in the form of a boar, when he appears in the form of a fish, Matsya, whether he appears in the form of a lion, Narasingha, whatever form the Lord appears in, that form is transcendental, and the activities of that form are transcendental. And by hearing such pastimes one can be relieved of all material contamination. So therefore, it is said that the Lord cannot be covered by Maya. Maya dakshina prakrite suyate sachara charam. Even when the Lord descends into this material world, he comes in his spiritual form. Atma Mayaya. Atma Mayaya. The Lord comes in his original spiritual form. So, those activities the Lord performs are spiritual activities. And by hearing such activities, the living entity can become purified of all material contamination. So, in text 9, it says, Vidura said, since you know of matters inconceivable to us, tell me, O holy sage, what did Brahma do to create living beings after evolving the Prajapatis? So, Brahma, the first created being in the universe, was empowered to create. He was empowered to generate living entities. He was empowered to fill the universe with different planets, different conditions, different living entities, and to manifest the different activities of the living entities. So therefore, Brahma is also very exalted. And so the word here, Avyakta Margavit. Avyakta Margavit means one who knows that which is beyond our perception. So Brahma is not an ordinary soul. He was in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was enlightened by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tene Brahma Hirdaya Adi Kavaye. So Lord Brahma was the first student of the Vedic scriptures. And his teacher, special teacher, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. So Brahma was in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead from within and from without. And therefore, he became empowered with knowledge, empowered with Shakti, empowered with intelligence to be able to manifest the contents of the universe, which is described as Visharga. So, in text 10, which also have no purport, 10 and 11, it says, Vidura inquired, how did the Prajapatis, such progenitors of living entities as Marikshi, Swayambhuva Manu, create according to the instructions of Brahma? And how did they evolve this manifested universe? Then text 11 says, did they evolve the creation in conjunction with their respective wives? Did they remain independent in their action, or did they all jointly produce it? So Vidura is inquiring from Maitreya Muni how Brahma created and how the Prajapatis assisted Brahma in his Visarga, in his sub-creation or secondary creation. Did they do that independently? Or they did that in association with their wives? So these questions are leading to the manifestation of the Prajapatis, the manifestation of Manu and his wife, Satarupa, and then eventually the population of the universe. So someone can read text 12.
Okay, I read.
Yeah.
Maitreya said, when the equilibrium of the combination of the three modes of nature was agitated by the unseen activity of the living entity, by Mahavishnu, and by the force of time, the total material elements were produced.
You can read it, the slide also.
And the slide says that the causes of material creation, when the equilibrium of the combination of the three modes of nature was agitated by the unseen activities of the living entity, by Mahavishnu, and by the force of time, the total material elements were produced.
Yeah, thank you. So this is Sarga, the causes of material creation. The Srimad Bhagavatam tells us that Mahavishnu is the origin of the Mahatattva, and the Mahatattva contains the three modes of material nature that are in the dormant form, inactive. And when Mahavishnu glances at the Mahatattva and the modes of material nature, he injected life into them. And with the time element, with the time factor, with the force of time, the agitation for creation began. Mahatattva in its subtle form is called pradana. So pradana is within it is not material, it's not manifest. That is the unmanifested aspect of the material energy is called pradana. And that pradana form is within Mahavishnu. But when Mahavishnu wants to create or wants to effect creation, then he has to manifest the Mahatattva, which is a transformation of the pradana. The pradana, which was inactive, which is a subtle form of the material energy, now become manifest as the Mahatattva. And in that Mahatattva, the modes of nature are present. In that Mahatattva, time factor is present. In that Mahatattva, the living entities are present. And then the Lord now injects energy into that Mahatattva and sets the creation rolling. So it is mentioned here, by the unseen activity of the living entity, by Mahavishnu, and by the force of time, the total material elements were produced. So in other words, the cause of material creation are three. One, the unseen activity of the living entity. Two, Mahavishnu. And three, the force of time. The living entities, by their activities, we give room for creation. And Mahavishnu, as a facilitator of the material creation, plays a role. And the time factor, which allows things to manifest, sets things rolling. So therefore, material creation becomes manifest due to the unseen activity of the living entity from the previous creation, previous existence, and the Mahavishnu facilitating the material creation, and of course, the time factor. So therefore, it said the causes of material creation are one, Daiva. Daiva means the destiny of the conditioned souls. The conditioned souls are destined to accept bodies. They are destined to accept particular planetary systems, particular positions in order to fulfill their desires. So the first cause of material creation is Daiva, the destiny of the living entities. Material creation is meant for the enjoyment of the conditioned soul. The Lord provides material facilities for the pleasure of the living entities, because the living entities, they want to be away from the Lord. They want to imitate the Lord. And so the Lord allows them. He gives them the opportunity to mimic, to imitate his activities, but not in the spiritual world, outside of the spiritual world. So the desire of the living entity, which is described here as Daiva, is one of the causes of material creation. The second cause is described as Dhruvitakena, which means the agitation of the material energy by the glands of Mahavishnu. Material energy cannot act without the glands of Mahavishnu. Without being energized by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, material energy cannot act. Material energy is not independent. Maya Dakshana Prakritesa Yut. Material energy cannot act independently. Maya Dakshana Prakrite Suyatesa Chara Charam. Material energy is acting under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then the force of time, Kala, that's the third element. Kala, the force of time, agitates the modes to be active. And with the force of time, there is combination of the modes of nature. And along with the false ego combining with the mode of passion, false ego combining with the mode of ignorance, false ego combining with the mode of goodness, produces different types of living entities and different conditions of existence. So therefore, the causes of creation are Daiva, Dhruvitakena, and Kala. So that is what is being discussed here in this verse. Actually, our time has expired. It's after 10 o'clock. We're supposed to end at 10 o'clock. So I think if there are no questions or comments, we'll end here on text 12. And then next week, we can begin from text 13. I hope we'll try to move a bit faster next week so we can see whether we can complete the chapter or it will take us to the next day. I don't know, but let's see. So any comments or questions? Otherwise, we call it a day.
Thank you very much, Grace Srivas Vanacari, for the beautiful rendition. The unique way of explaining it resonates with my heart. I don't know of other students, but for me, I feel so, enriched by the explanations. The only thing I wanted to ask, I know it is already over time. We are 13 minutes ahead, after the.
Yeah.
I was checking the English meaning of the word equilibrium.
Okay.
Which means a state of balance. When forces comes together and there's a balance.
Yeah.
And I'm taking it in that meaning of the word equilibrium. And looking at this sentence, when the equilibrium of the combination of the three modes of material nature was agitated by the unseen activities of the living entity, I'm trying to mash these two together, and I'm wondering, what is the unseen activities of the living entity that is referred to here? Because the entity before the manifestation or coming in contact with the three modes of material nature was in sattva, is in truth. And when it comes in contact with three modes of material nature, it becomes covered. And then looking at material nature, does it really mean that both goodness, passion, and ignorance are on the same platform before the contact of the living entity? The living entity brings in the diversity of the shade of the three modes. So I'm trying to understand that.
Well, you see, with the modes of nature present in the pradana, then the modes of nature are present in the pradana, which is the subtle form of material energy. Pradana is a subtle form of material energy which is within Mahavishnu. For the purpose of creation, Mahavishnu manifests this pradana. This pradana now becomes Mahatattva. And in that Mahatattva, that is where the agitation takes place. When it is in the pradana form, it is not agitated. So the agitation is coming from the desire of the living entity, which is described as daiva. In fact, for us to get a picture clear, we have to understand that this material manifestation is also described as Nitya Lila. It is eternally happening. Srila Prabhupada mentions that there is no historical evidence when the material creation took place and when the living entity entered the material creation. There is no historical evidence, which means it is also eternally going on. The living entities, not all of them, maybe a quarter of them, a minute percentage of them, desire something else. Instead of serving the Lord, they want something else. And so the Lord makes that facility available. He makes that arrangement. So that desire of the living entity to act away from the Lord is called daiva. that desire to experiment, to imitate the Lord, is responsible for the agitation of the modes of material nature. And that is what is described here as diva. So the modes of nature, they remain inactive in the pradana stage of the material energy. But when it is time to manifest the material creation, based on the desire of the living entity to experience material life, the Lord manifests the Mahatattva. And the Lord injects his potency, his energy into the Mahatattva. And the Mahatattva begin to act. The modes of nature become active. And they begin to react in such a way that material creation can take place. Before then, in the form of pradana, everything is inactive. You cannot even differentiate between passion, goodness, and ignorance. They are all in a very subtle form and they are inactive. But as soon as they manifest as Mahatattva, and with the glance of Mahavishnu, then based on the desire of the living entity, then the modes become active. And only then you can identify this is the mode of goodness, this is the mode of passion, this is the mode of ignorance, and they begin to combine with the element of false ego to produce the different kinds of material, Dravya Shakti, which is the material elements, the 5 great elements, the 5 gross elements, and then they combine with the mode of passion, they create the intelligence, and then the desires, and then they combine it with the mode of goodness. It creates the mind and the demigods in charge of the senses. Yeah, so the different items are created due to this agitation of the modes of nature, which is actually coming from the desire of the living entity. But this is only possible when pradana is transformed into Mahatattva. In the stage of pradana, you cannot identify the various elements. They are all in a very subtle form. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. For my understanding, could we say an example of something like at the bank of a small lake, the water is in the surface, the mud is under with so many condiments.
That's right.
But when the stone by the riverside is thrown inside the lake, then all of the condiments under the lake comes out and they start showing different colors, and they even sometimes discolored completely the whole of the water in the lake.
Yeah.
Maybe something like that.
Yeah, we can put it that way.
Just for my material mind understanding.
Yeah, in the pradana state, everything is quiet, everything is serene, everything is, we can say everything is spiritual actually in the pradana state. But when it is transformed into Mahatattva, that is when the stone drops into the water, and begins to state and becomes muddy, it becomes color. So all these things begin to happen.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we shall continue from next week.
Thank you very much for your time. We're grateful. So, dear devotees, I'll request each and every one of you to unmute now at this point. Let us loudly chant a powerful Hare Krishna mantra to appreciate our teacher for this wonderful rendition. Hare Krishna, Hare
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Ram, Hare
Hare
Ram, Ram
Ram,
Ram,
Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Jai
Jai Shri Prabhupada ki
Vaishnav Namo Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinde ki jai. His grace.
Jai.
Sari ki jai.
Maharaj ki jai.
Gora Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai
Jai.
Gora Vrinda.